As we head into the 250th, one Democratic leader is playing direct counter-programming to President Trump for the July 4th holiday. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland is set to deliver a speech from the State House in Annapolis tomorrow. It's titled The Work of Patriotism. In it, the governor is expected to make the case that Democrats cannot cede patriotism to the president. And Governor Moore joins us now. He is, of course, also a combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. Governor, great to see you as always.
Thank you.
Happy 4th of July to you. So give us a preview, if you will, because this is interesting. The idea of patriotism has become, sadly, polarizing. Even symbols of this country, like the flag. I know some Democrats who are they feel ambivalent about it, at least for now, because they feel like President Trump has seized it all for himself. Give us a sense as to what you plan to say tomorrow.
I want to highlight the fact that the United States is still the greatest experiment in world history, that there was nothing like it before. And in many ways, there's been nothing like it since. Now, we understand that our history is complex. We understand that our history is complicated, that it has been ugly at times. But I also know there has been this arc that patriotism and the work of patriotism has really inspired, that tomorrow I will be giving an address as the first African-American governor in the history of the state of Maryland, and I'll be giving it from our state house, which was partially built by the hands of enslaved people. There is something to the unlikely nature of this country, and I think that what we are seeing in Washington, D.C., while we're watching almost a tribute to self, a tribute to an ideology, is not just backwards, but it's deeply un-American. And so, when we see darkness, we want to introduce light. When we see hatred, we want to introduce love and context. And I think that's what the speech tomorrow is going to help to highlight.
Governor, as I hear you talk about what your speech is going to highlight, I think about the way that we started the show today with David Ignatius writing a column about how the U.S. is glowing and decaying all at once. And I think even as I hear you talk about the historic abilities that you yourself embody, are we still a country at this moment that is striving for our better angels? And as we look at this 250th anniversary, what do you hope for the next 250th or even for the next year?
There's a great song by Donny Hathaway called A Song for You. And he says in it, I know your image of me is what I hope to be. And I think in many ways that's a story of America, where the image of America is what we hope to be and we strive to be. But it's something that even when the country was first founded, it wasn't founded on the idea that we created a perfect union. It was on the idea that we're creating a more perfect union, and that every generation, their job is to help to bring that about. And I think that's the difference in many ways between America 250 and Freedom 250, where America 250 is a celebration of patriotism. Freedom 250 is a celebration of nationalism. And that's the difference that I think the president is inspiring here. And so I think the hope that we have is if we really take on the work of patriotism, the work that so many before us did, that we actually have a better chance of being the country that we hope to be.
Governor, there has never been, I think, a feeling that I can recall of the mainstream, the rest of the country feeling like there are things going on at the very top, both embodied by institutions as well as this administration, things going on that they cannot access or profit from. And yet they're being asked to, of course, celebrate a country that seems politically like it is heading in a direction that only exacerbates that gap between what is being done behind the scenes and what is being told to them. How do you speak to a nation that is looking for something like critique, perhaps, while also feeling like the notion of pride is obviously a political opportunity for the Democrats that hasn't quite been seized?
I mean, it's absolutely right, and I think that feeling is justified because, we're here talking about how the United States was a gift. But for many people in this country, what they're seeing is a grift, right? They're seeing a president who has now profited by billions of dollars. We are seeing policies that are cutting people off of health care, policies that are ripping children away from food assistance, all while we can give billionaires tax cuts. And so the frustration that people feel, it is a very real frustration. I understand it. And the cynicism is real. The thing that I ask in this moment is, and remind people is, again, I don't come from a political background or political family. This is the first office I ever held in my life. And so my measure of cynicism has not left me. I still carry it with me every single day. It's part of the reason that I ran for governor in the first place. But I want for that cynicism to be my companion, but I don't want it to be my captor. I don't want it to be something that I can look at the future and say, I'm now opting out, and I'm forgetting about the sacrifices that people made before me. What I want to use it is as my motivation and my ammunition to be able to think about the type of future that we want to be able to pull together. What we are seeing right now from Washington, D.C. and from this Trump administration, it is grotesque. But the answer to it is not simply to forfeit and to let it happen. The answer to it is to do what those who came before us did and say, we will fight for a better future, because that was the hopes of this nation in the first place.
Democratic Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, thank you so much. We'll be watching for your speech. Happy 4th of July to you.
Happy 4th. Thank you.